A passport isn't just a beautiful booklet with stamps. It's the document telling you which country you belong to. Maybe your national ID card is enough in your own country, but it is no longer sufficient when you travel abroad. You need something that works anywhere in the world. And that's what a passport is. Your official identity when you are in a foreign country. Do you know there is a ranking of the most powerful passports in the world? It's called the Henley Index and measures the power of a passport by the number of countries you can enter without a visa. The most powerful passport is Singapore's, with more than 192 visa-free destinations, and the one from South Korea and Japan follows with 187 destinations each. Humanly speaking, any of these passports would have reasons to brag. Now, listen carefully. During Paul's time, being a Roman citizen was an enormous privilege. And here is the thing, Paul was a Roman citizen, and so were the Philippians. It was like having a powerful passport. They had status, rights, and legal protection. But Paul told them something that leaves them thinking, our citizenship is in heaven. Sabbath School-like presents the series Uniting Heaven and Earth. Lesson 7, A Heavenly Citizenship. What did Paul mean when he said that our citizenship is in heaven?
That our passport is more powerful than the one from Singapore.
And that even though we live here, we don't have permanent residency.
Exactly. If you are Christian, you live here, but you belong to heaven. You are just passing through. Your true identity isn't defined by this world, but by the kingdom of heaven, and that completely changes the way you live. So this week's question is, how does a citizen of the kingdom of heaven live in this world? First, seek role models of the kingdom. Have you ever met people who leave their country and lose their identity within 2 or 3 months?
Yes, you call them to know how they are going, and they already answer with another accent.
Or they tell you, oh, sorry, I didn't recognize your country's code.
Well, one thing is adapting oneself to the culture. That is usually good, and quite another is losing your identity, which almost never ends well. And how do we preserve our identity? Associate with people who reflect that identity. The same applies to spiritual life. If you are a citizen of heaven, you need to surround yourself with people who live as citizens of heaven. That's why Paul says, brethren, join in fellowship my example, and note those who so walk, as you have us for a pattern. Do you notice? Here, Paul is speaking of role models. And what is a role model? Something or someone worthy to imitate. Listen carefully. Paul isn't saying he is the ultimate role model. In his first letter to the Corinthians, Paul sets it more than clear. Imitate me, as I also imitate Christ. Christ is the true role model. But since we cannot physically interact with Christ now, then we must surround ourselves with people who are faithful followers of Christ and thus have good role models. Why? Because bad role models always abound. That's why Paul tells them to imitate him. Imitate those who so walk, for many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are enemies of the cross of Christ. The same is still happening today. It isn't about seeing the world's role models as our enemies, but rather as enemies of the cross of Christ. Listen carefully. Today's media and social networks are full of role models, influencers, athletes, singers, actors, politicians. Who are you following? Who are you looking up to? Do you think this has nothing to do with it? Paul hits the nail on the head when he uses the verb to look, from the Greek skopeo, which means directing our gaze toward a target. If you fix your gaze on an enemy of the cross, that will be your role model. But if you fix your gaze on a follower of Christ, your father, your mother, a church leader, a devoted friend, this will be your role model. Then you will retain your heavenly accent, and you will recognize heaven's code, and you won't lose the identity of a heaven citizen, because a heavenly citizen chooses whom to follow. Second, live in the peace of the kingdom. Now let's imagine that we are in a foreign country and suddenly a war breaks out. There is chaos, there is fear. what do?
Run to my country's embassy.
Why?
Because we will be protected there.
Exactly. And Paul reminds us that the citizens of the kingdom of heaven live under another covering. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Paul doesn't say that there will be no problem. He says that the peace of God acts as a safe embassy in the midst of chaos. And what is the peace of God? Jesus said it.
Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid.
Do you notice? God's peace is not the absence of problems. It's not being afraid in the midst of problems, because we know that Christ is our safe embassy. And what is the door of that embassy? Prayer. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplications, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Ask with thanksgiving. What does that mean? Listen carefully. The best antidote to anxiety is to pray, believing and acting as if our petition has been heard and answered even before it is. Paul knew what it means to live in the peace of God. That's why he says later, I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Glory to the Lord. This is living in the peace of God. Is there a crisis at home? Financial problems? Struggles with the children? Do you feel persecuted? Sick? Remember that you are a citizen of heaven. Open the door of the embassy with a prayer and take refuge in the arms of the greatest ambassador of heaven, Christ Jesus. Then you will understand what Paul was referring to when he says, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. And third, think about the values of the kingdom. Those who have lived far from their countries and long to return know that one of the strongest ties to our homeland is our thoughts. We think about the landscape, the people, the food. We think about all the good things we left behind.
Yes, you end up missing even the things you used to criticize.
Because even though we are far away, our mind remains connected to our homeland.
Exactly. And Paul says the same thing should happen with the citizens of heaven. We might be living on earth still, but our mind is still connected to the kingdom. That's why he writes, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. Do you notice? Paul says that there are 6 values that must occupy our minds. Truth, it's what requires no embellishment to look beautiful. Jesus said, verily, verily, I say to you, because truth doesn't disguise itself. Thinking in whatever things are true is living without lies, without double standards, without edited lives. Honor is what generates respect. Keeping your word, being on time, treating others well. A citizen of heaven lives in such a way that their lives inspire trust. Justice, it's acting not out of self-interest but doing what is right no matter the cost. Because justice doesn't show what is convenient to me, it shows God's character. Purity, it's what is uncontaminated, like clean water. Purity begins in the mind. What you look at, listen to, what you let linger in your mind. And a clean heart will always produce clean actions. Good report is focusing on what edifies, brings peace, what reflects the Creator. Not everything good makes noise. It simply brings calm, oftentimes. Praiseworthiness. It's a noticeable faith, not because it makes noise, but because it leaves marks on the world. A passport defines where you belong and guarantees that you can return home even when you are abroad. And the home we will return to is the kingdom of heaven. But while we remain strangers on this earth, we are called to seek role models of the kingdom, to live in the peace of the kingdom, and to think about the values of the kingdom. So live in such a way that reflects where you are from, that your accent, your decisions, and your way of thinking reflects your true homeland, because our citizenship is in heaven. Do you want to support our ministry so we can keep filling the internet with content that truly matters? Content that educates the whole family around the message of Christ. Scan the QR code or visit the link in the video description and support us. Remember, together we can grow more.